All right, my friend. So we're going to take you on a trip as we go from Brownsville, Tennessee through to Covington. I had a guy email me today, a client of mine, nice guy. He said, hey, I know we ran the software. I just can't convince my wife that it's safe to retire. Can you rerun the software, blah, 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 to prove to her that that's okay, because he's in a crappy old job. I got another video about crappy old jobs to do, by the way. I got admonished by a guy about my Christian views and calling it a crappy old job. So anyway, I'll get in that here in just a second because that kind of annoyed me. I'll do another video about that. All right, so here's my man. We'll call him Dave. All right. It's not Dave, but let's just say his name's Dave. He says, look, man, I just can't convince her. And we already had a discussion. We've already crunched the numbers and all that. And she's just not on board. So I emailed him back and said, Dave, all the software, all the spreadsheets, all the nice graphs in the world aren't going to change her mind. She has this fear of the unknown. And the fear of the unknown, all the data isn't going to stop that fear of the unknown. Because it's like when you're a kid and your parents say there's no such thing as ghosts, and you're still afraid of ghosts, why? Because it's scary. It's the unknown. You don't know. What if they do exist? Because you cannot prove that they don't exist. You literally cannot prove that ghosts don't exist. And the kids intuitively know that. I said, well, they've never seen one, but maybe they do exist. Maybe werewolves, maybe vampires, maybe they, what if they're just wrong? You're trying to prove a negative. I'm trying to prove that you will not run out of money in retirement. You can't prove that. It's unprovable. It's unprovable. So I can throw you all the nicest graphs and spreadsheets in the world. It is still an unknowable. So what I emailed back said, here's what you have to do. You have to have her set a flag in the ground to identify what her fear is. You can't just let it be, well, I'm afraid of running out of money. Okay, well, here's the software that says you're not. No. Pretty flat over here. This looks like a tornado alley, that's for sure. You got to go more than that. You got to say, Jane, what exactly are you fearful of? Identify it. You've got to identify the target and then take it out. And in this case, the target is, I don't know exactly. I imagine health costs. So I said, okay, all right, so we say, Jane, what is it that you're worried about? Well, I'm worried about running out of money. Okay, we got to dive deeper to that. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, you hear all these stories about healthcare costs in retirement. Okay, well, what do you hear? Well, you hear about this. We'll say, $100,000 as worth $250,000 as a long-term care need. Okay, good. That's starting to lay the foundation. We're putting a flag point in the ground, drawing a line in the sand. Okay, good. When do you think that might happen? So we got $250,000. All right, that's what we're concerned with. We're going to inflate that as well. When do you think that could happen? Do you think it could happen now? Because my man Dave is in his, I think, mid-50s. I think they're both in their mid-50s, maybe late 50s. Is that likely to happen today? No, it could. Okay, let's just say it did. How do we pay for it? Well, that's what we got to dive into. In this case, they got more than enough assets to pay for it. Now, they could get a long-term care insurance policy if they want to. Again, I'm not sure you need to. Let's see if I can pass this guy here real quick. I don't think you need to get a long-term care, but they certainly could. That just add to their expenditures, though. And would that cover the whole risk? I don't think so. So then we got to say, okay, why do you think this could be a situation? Well, because I've heard horror stories. Okay, gotcha. All right, so we've heard horror stories. So the worst case scenario, Jane, is that you think we could have a $250,000 expenditure for long-term care. Yes, okay. And that's it, man. They're rolling a cotton, right? That is crazy. They got these cotton rolls. That is way cool. I've never seen that before. Cool, man. So I got this cotton farm on the left of me. All right. Then we got to identify when this could happen. So you say right now, well, is that really likely, Jane? I mean, literally, is that likely? No, but it could. Okay. So let's just say it did. How do we pay for it? We're going to pay for it out of assets. Okay. Good. So $250,000, that's the total amount it would cost, right? Yeah. All right, so we pay for it out of assets. So do we have $250,000 and then we adjust for inflation to cover that expense? Then the answer is either yes or no. In this case, the answer is unequivocally yes. All right, so we've covered that. All right, now part two of that is how long will we need long-term care if that were to happen? 5 years. Okay, so we got $250,000 we have to pay for over 5 years, and you can do some inflation, just run the numbers there. And then we'll just say Dave dies after 5 years and costs us $250,000 today, and then we inflate it, so the total cost is $350,000. Where does that leave Jane? That leaves Jane in a very good place. Why? Because she has this house that she could turn around and sell if she needed to, but she also had more than adequate assets to cover that, without question. All right. So that's if it happens now. What if it happens in the future? All right, so Jane, what if it happens when we're 80 years old? So it's $250,000 now. Let's just inflate that and say it's $1 million. All right, let's just say it's $1 million what it's going to cost when we're 80 years old, just for simplicity. What would happen then? How would we cover that? Well, do you not agree that our assets could grow? At least at the rate of inflation? Yes, okay. So if it costs $250,000 today, let's get around this guy, all right, and our assets could, and it costs inflation, we'll just say, but when all is said and done, it's going to be $500,000 because we're just going to use double the cost when 20 years from now, whatever it is. All right, so let's just say that's $500,000. Our assets, will they also grow? Even if we just grow them at 3% a year, would that be acceptable to you? A 3% a year asset base growth. And she'll say yeah or nay. And you say yes. Okay. So now we got it, we'll just say for simplicity, we started with $1 million. $1 million over 3% a year in 20 years will be worth $2 million, just for simplicity. So now we have $2 million to cover a $500,000 expense. Because we have $1 million today, and the expense is $250,000 today. 20 years from now, we'll have $2 million, and the expense is $500,000. Is that doable? Okay. And I'm only giving a 3% rate of return. Now you got to factor in taxes. Okay, so we pulled out taxes. All right, so Jane, what happens then too if Dave's in a long-term care facility? Are you likely to stay in this big old house that you have? Probably not. So what would you do? Well, you'd probably sell it and downsize, all right? How much equity can we get? Because I hardly have any debt at all, my friends. I can get a whole bunch of equity out of there. Okay, good. So does that seem reasonable? Yes, okay. Covington, all right, sweet. So we just keep plugging away like this. Okay, what else are we concerned with? Well, what if our expenses are higher in retirement than we're expecting? Okay, so that's what we gotta say. Let's dive into this. What do you think it's gonna be? If I gave you $10,000 a month, that's $120,000 a year, all right? And you can just go over. Are you spending that right now? Yes, no, or otherwise. So hear me out for a second. We got I just want to say $10,000 a month. Are you spending that right now? It's either they are or they are not. If they're not, then why would you think you're going to spend that in retirement? And by the way, I've already had a vacation goal for them as well. So if they're not spending $10,000 a year, but they're going to travel, we've already had that set up in the software. All right. So let's just say, for instance, they think they're going to spend $10,000 a month in retirement. Do you think you're going to spend that for the rest of your life? Again, we'll say yes. We just got to get her to lay the benchmark, draw the line in the sand, and say, okay, this is the worst case scenario according to you. Now, it's not likely to happen, but let's just say it is. Can we accommodate that? Now, the interesting thing is here, she has a big fat pension. So if they're spending $10,000 a month, her pension alone is going to cover $8,000 of that, or something like that. I can't remember how much, but a significant amount. because some of these employees in the state of California get fat pensions, man, fat pensions, which is unsustainable. Now, she might say, well, what if the pension goes kaput? Yeah, that's the challenge. I mean, that's a fact. The pensions are not sustainable. The state of California is going to, the state of New Jersey, state of Kentucky, there's lots of Illinois. They're going to have to come to grips with the fact that these pensions are unsustainable. And let's say what would you think? That they pull 30,000 or 30% away a year? I mean, hey, that's not likely to happen. Let's just say, see how this goes. The issue is you got to get her to state what the worry is. And then you've got to deal with the worry and say, let me show you. Now, we're not talking about children here where you cannot not prove that ghost exists. Or you can't with a child. So a child's going to have to figure it out on his own. But in some way, it's the same regard here. And I don't mean to sound, I'm patronizing here. But it's the same thing. You've got to lay down, what are you afraid of? I'm afraid of vampires. Okay, good. Let's talk about that. Now, with a child, you're not going to convince them there's no vampires. I mean, you could go some way, but most likely not. But in this case, in real-world scenarios, we actually have real money to contend with. We just got to identify the fear. And it cannot be, I'm afraid we're going to run out of money. That's not acceptable in a relationship. I'm sorry. No. I need more than that. Why are you afraid we're going to run out of money? There's always health care. Market crash. Okay, market crash. In this case, they got that pension. But you've got to get them to say, I'm afraid we're going to run out of money. You say, okay, how much will we need to live on? We've got to identify the risk so we can beat it back. How much do you think, when you say you're afraid to run out of money, why? Why do you think that? Well, we're going to spend more than we anticipate. Okay, let's throw the numbers in there. I deal with this a lot, actually, and I'm just telling you, man, software isn't the reprieve from fear. It's just not. You've got to get them to commit, man. They've got to commit to something. I'm sorry, if they don't commit to something, they're being disingenuous. I have limited patience for people who are, I'm just afraid. Why? What are you afraid of? You got to get them to identify what they're afraid of, or else we're just spinning our heels. And if they don't identify the fear, that's not rational, and you being rational isn't going to overcome their irrationality. I hope that makes sense, man. I get this a lot, and it's sad. I'll tell you, man, I've been in this business a long time, and a lot of financial advisors, they make this horrific mistake, like, well, I showed you the Monte Carlo. That freaking doesn't mean crap. Well, I showed you the analysis. I read this article from some PhD. It doesn't mean crap. We need to have numbers, specific. We've got to identify the threat. You identify the threat, and you take it out. All right, man, we hope this helps. We're getting ready to hit Covington, so I want to see where we are. And maybe we'll just hang tight here. Nah, we'll stop. We'll come back around. All right. I love your comments. See ya.